15 tips for Age of Mythology Retold. Stopping villager harass. While gathering resources, your villagers will run away if they're attacked. This is fine if there's a real threat, but often players will try to harass with low damage units like the Catacomber's Scout with its 1 DPS. To do this, you can change your villagers into stand ground stance. Then you can occasionally shank back until it runs away or stays around too long and they lose their scout. Perfect farms. Farms can now be placed so easily in Retold, you no longer have to manually think about where they're going. If you have a group of villagers, select your farm, hold shift and hover over the town centre or a granary, and then just spam click to put them down. They'll automatically be placed in the closest spot available and get perfect farms every time. And then use that time for something else or just sit back and watch your farms go. Luring animals. Huntable animals can be easily manipulated to be lured in any direction. For aggressive animals like hippos, when you shoot them with your arrow, they'll run towards your villager to attack it. This is perfect for luring them underneath your TC or granary. For non-aggressive hunt, like deer, when they're attacked, they'll move in the opposite direction. For these, you want to move your villager to the opposite side of your granary to help them move in the right direction. They can also even be pushed with your villager and they can move pretty far. Free queue. If you want a technology to queue right away, even if you're producing something else in that building, you can right-click the technology and move it to the start of the queue. You can even do this if you don't have the resources yet. It will start researching above everything else as soon as you can afford it. Best used for expensive techs like advancing to the next stage or must-grab upgrades that you want as soon as possible. You can also queue technologies from later ages, and as soon as you advance, it will start, like the champion line upgrades. It will pause wherever it is currently training, so if this is a villager, you may be missing out. The livestock button. This might sound ridiculous, but this could be one of my favourite additions to Retold. If you're scouting around and find a bunch of pigs or goats, rather than manually tasking them back to the town centre, you can hit this one button with a sheep on it, and they all come running home. Genius. Select all heroes. This is a hotkey you really want to start using. By default it's Alt-Shift-D. I'd probably change it to something a little bit easier to press. Xbox players have it nice and easy with the long press of right on the D-pad. As heroes tend to get lost in the fights in Retold, if they're not attacking a myth unit, then their huge damage multiplier is just wasted. Hit the hotkey to easily select and task all your heroes to attack enemy myth units. Just make sure to deselect your pharaoh when playing Egyptians, as I'm sure Larry was doing something a bit more important. Population limit. One new quality of life feature to Retold is you can actually go over the population limit by a small amount. Not all units cost the same population. Villagers are 1 pop, whereas most military units are at least 2, and myth units are normally a bit more as well. But if you have at least 1 population space, then you can build any type of unit, no matter what the population cost is, even if this pushes you over the limit. My favourite place to use this is in an early Greek rush. You can advance to the classical age early with 14 out of 15 population, and then train your hero without needing to build a house. Resource drop-off. Your villagers can actually drop off resources into any type of economic building if the timing is right. For example, if you have villagers carrying food, they can build a mining camp and their food will be dropped off as soon as they finish constructing the building. Although you can't drop off food into a finished mining camp. This drop-off mechanic can work with any resource. Another example is food into the dock. If a villager is gathering food near a dock, they can drop their food off there automatically, but for some reason you can't task it to be dropped off itself. Village Centre. Village centres are town centres that are not restricted to be built on an empty settlement and can be placed anywhere on the map. The downside is they have less HP, don't give you extra population space, and train villagers at a slower rate. So why would you build one? It saves the walking time to an empty settlement and can be safer to build if you're underneath your starting town centre or next to some resources. It's important to have villagers nearby as it can only shoot arrows if you have units garrisoned inside. The good news is technologies and age ups train at the same time as a normal TC, and this can be the best way to make the most out of your village centre. Garrison mechanics. Jumping in and out of buildings can save you walking time and can protect your villagers from raids. There are 2 ways to get into a building. You can hold Alt to garrison in a specific building, or use the Seek Shelter hotkey by pressing Alt-C for villagers to run to safety on their own. To ungarrison, press Alt-X. If they manually enter the building with Alt, the villagers will follow the building's waypoint when exiting. But if they went to Seek Shelter, when ejected they'll return to their previous task. You can also mass eject production buildings this way, by selecting all your buildings with units in and then hitting the eject key. Perfect when you're being attacked and need to mass up units. Formations. While formations aren't used as much in Retold as other Age of Empires games, they can still be pretty useful. The default is line formation, and this can be used most of the time. Changing to box formation is great to protect vulnerable units in the middle of your army, especially if you're being surrounded. Spread formation can give your units extra line of sight when scouting or raiding, but it's best used against AoE myth unit attacks or god powers like Shockwave and Chaos. It gives the ability to dodge a lot of the damage. Double tagged units. Some units are classified as two types, like the Chariot Archer, which is a cavalry unit and a ranged archer. This means they take bonus damage from cav counters like the Catapultes and ranged counters like the Peltast, which is not ideal, but they do gain some perks. Double tagged units gain relic bonuses for both types of unit, so a Terma could get 10% faster movement speed with Dwarven Horseshoes, and also 1 additional range from Ula's bow. Ballistics. One of the most important techs to get in the Heroic Age is Ballistics. This upgrade increases the accuracy of your ranged projectiles. Pre-Ballistics, the majority of moving targets at medium and long range will be able to dodge arrows, no matter how fast the unit is. But if a unit is moving at close range, or towards or away from the attacker, it will be a bit more accurate. If microed correctly, you can dodge a lot of damage. After Ballistics is in, most arrows will now hit the target. Even units like Bellerophon with his 6 speed will be hit by arrows at around 15 range, but he can still dodge arrows at max Chariot and Arcus range of 20, whereas slow units get hit no matter how far away they are. With some well-timed micro, however, you can dodge arrows by changing the direction after the arrow gets fired, but in a real game that's going to be very hard to pull off. Age up bonuses. On each age up, myth units gain a 20% HP and damage increase, meaning your classical age myth units like the Minotaurs will still hold their own in the late game. If you build a handful of classical myth units and wait till you get to the heroic age, this can cause a great timing attack combo, where you're essentially getting heavy line upgrades for free. Heroes also gain increased HP and damage on age up, but not the Atlanteans, they gain stats off of line upgrades, plus additional range for priests and pharaohs. Favor is king. Myth units, god powers, and minor god technologies are all super strong, so it's a good idea to prioritize your favor income. A good time to add extra favor gatherers is when advancing to each age, another monument, a couple more oracles, or a few more villagers praying at the temple before you hit each age. And I guess for the Norse, you just need to build more Ballisons.